In the name of our God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. Many of us remember the last speech of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. It was on the night of April 3rd, 1968, as a storm raged outside the auditorium. King was in Memphis, Tennessee, there to support the strike by the city's sanitation workers. And in this speech, King called for unity, economic actions, boycotts, and nonviolent protest, all the while challenging the United States to live up to our ideals. The threats against King from the late 50s to this moment were escalating. And he had a premonition that his life was coming to an end. And so at the end of this speech, King gave a nod to today's reading in Deuteronomy. As Moses, his life also coming to an end, stood on the cusp of the promised land. And King said, "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." Can you hear King's cadences in your mind? The rising, the falling, the ringing out like an Old Testament prophet. King was assassinated the next day. In Deuteronomy, Moses is the leader of the Hebrews who have followed him from liberation at the Red Sea all the way to the very border of the Promised Land. Moses, too, senses that his life is near its end, and it will not be his joy, it will not be his privilege to lead the people into this land flowing with milk and honey. That joy and privilege would be Joshua's. As Moses surveyed the land of dreams, he, like King would many centuries later, must have felt the bittersweet satisfaction of having played his role, but not the deep joy of seeing the goal fulfilled. But with or without Moses, with or without Martin, the people go forward with their God. There is much to ponder in these two parallel stories, but one striking feature is that the unfolding of God's dream for humankind crosses from generation to generation, from one millennium to the next and to the next. And that perhaps more often than not, it isn't our joy or privilege or satisfaction to see the fulfillment of all our labors and all our hopes. I think of my father. He died before his daughter graduated from college. He died before his son became a priest. He died before seeing any of his grandchildren. but what a role he played in bringing all of our lives to those moments and beyond. And I think of the forebears of St. John the Baptist Episcopal Church in Breckenridge, Colorado. We have read many stories about our earliest parishioners shared by John Evans. Their lives were short or long, successful or otherwise, fruitful or tragic. But together, all these hardy souls established this church, St. John's, with their blood and their sweat and their tears and their toil. And for 129 years, come March, they worship God and serve their neighbors in Summit County and beyond. And here we are in 2020, renovating our historical parish so that it might stand on a firm foundation for yet another 100 years or more. And today, while simultaneously witnessing to the gospel of Christ the best we can, we are in the midst of an expanding pandemic, in the midst of an exceedingly contentious political season, in the midst of challenges that each and every person, each and every household are experiencing in their own lives. God willing, all of us will see the completion of our renovation, and on that happy day, we will re-enter our beloved house of God, both historic and transformed, with the deepest joy. But how many of us will see what God is doing within and beyond St. John's in 2030, in 2050, in 2070? Like our forebears, all of us are standing on the mountaintop, more likely Peak 9 than Mount Nebo. And the future lays out before us like a vast panorama until it disappears into the far horizon. But now is our time. This is our place. And like Moses and Joshua in their day and Martin in his day, we put our shoulder to the wheel and labor with God and with each other to move into the future that God has dreamed for us. This is what our Every Member Canvas is all about. And the question posed to us years ago by David Walker, and again this month by Brad Sutherland, is this: will we chomp our apples to the core and leave behind for God the ragged and browning remnants? Or will we give God the first and very best bite? The people of God always stand on the shoulders of those who have come before. Apostles, martyrs, prophets, and all the faithful departed. We are the inheritors of their generosity. But now, this is our time. This is our place. And the prayerful choices we make today will become the inheritance of those who follow us for years, for generations to come. May all we do be a blessing to this church, this community, and this world, to our joy and to God's glory. Amen.